haven't slept in weeks.
That would be accurate, because I'll just show you. I'll just show you.
Okay. Also, I'm going to recommend that if anyone on this chat is not inebriated, you're going to need to be, because the material we're covering is not fun. I mean, it is fun, but you will go insane.
It's going to suck.
I have. He's got the puppy to inoculate him against the Time War.
Oh my God! It's not going to be enough, Alex. Start pouring out the whiskey. You need it. I speak from experience. I did this for a year and I nearly killed myself. So get drunk fast.
I've been meaning to get myself a bottle of absinthe.
All right. Welcome to the first episode of Tales from the Hall of Dark Truth. I am your Uncle Sickness. With me, as usual, but in a slightly different context, is YogaMidnight. There he is. Maeko. Yes. Also, man of few words. And Doc Casstles himself, aka Volcano Hands. Welcome, sir. Today,
thank you.
We will be attempting to have a conversation about the Lemurian Timewar. And just as a slight reference, so you know, we are nearly 3 hours into a session. And you are probably not going to see anything in chronological order. And that is extremely appropriate considering the subject matter. So, Time War.
Time War.
I would say that...
where do we want to begin with this?
I would say that as soon as you mention something like that, you are likely to get a positive response. You know, people are going to be receptive. Let's have a conversation about Time War, bro. They're going to be cool because they saw those early David Tennant seasons of the new Doctor Who. And since chicks are comfortable with it, they're comfortable with it. So let's talk about what, you know, and then you start to talk about, no, there were really some psycho pervert dust heads, and they tried to go back in time and have a, penis sword fight with themselves to alternate the universe through the future of the, what, you know, you can't even really talk about it.
Oh, hell yeah.
So,
Time War.
Time War. It's the whole thing of the Lemurian Time War is that it's the sort of thing that you will spend a lot of time talking about where you won't actually say anything. We've already mentioned it, 3 times? I've said it personally 3 times already. And what do any of you know about it? Again, many things are chopped up and edited and out of order, but we've been recording for X amount of time. And we've all said time. We've been talking about this, and none of us have actually said anything, which is an awfully telling feature.
I'll let
and
Matt and
component
Alex go first. You guys enlighten us. What do you know about the Time War? What do you know about the Lemurian Time War?
All I know is I asked for some kind of summary and I didn't get it. That's all I know.
That's what I was hoping for too. But just what I'm
lazy bastards. Lazy.
Read it.
Well, Uncle, I'm sure you can provide a synopsis.
It's. I can't. No, I can't. Like, what do you even say? Like, because it's not really even about anything. It's these guys.
Is this fiction? It's fiction, right?
Yes.
Sort of.
So
shall I provide a synopsis?
Would you please provide a synopsis? Because it just kind of makes me angry.
Okay, so here's the rundown. This is part of the works of the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, or CCRU. It was written We're not really sure with the book, but it's between 1997 and 2003, one of the earlier texts. We know that it tells of William S. Burroughs, the famous Beat Generation writer, having met with a metafictional character named Captain Visperov, going to his private library and finding a book that hadn't been written yet. He reads this book, The Ghost Lemurs of Madagascar, which implants the book into his brain and therefore ensures he will write it. It's implied that this is a tactic of one side of a larger war, the subcontinent / imaginary location of Lemuria, in their antagonism of the other subcontinent / imaginary location of Atlantis, which I sense will either be addressed later in the episode or in another episode, because this shit is painfully complicated, so let's keep it basic. So that's where we're at.
Can I ask you, that book, The Levers of Whatever, is that actually a book by Burroughs? Did he write that book?
It is. It's a short story. The Ghost Lemurs of Madagascar was published in Omni magazine back in the 70s, I think. It can be found online for free. I'm sure we can put it in the description for this YouTube video. I will send a link so that it can be put in. So,
cutting with another Burroughs question, because I saw the mention. I saw the mention of Apukas here in what I was surveying briefly, and I'm just curious if you know anything, because I make, one of the things I do is I make graphic novels, or like in pieces. Like I have a hard time finishing things, but I like graphic novels, and I was really into the book that Malcolm, I can't remember his last name. He was an artist that was working with Burroughs for 10 years on a graphic novel version of Apukas here. And are you familiar with this?
Yes, I've seen a number of pages. I haven't the actual physical book yet. Working on saving up for it.
It was never put together completely. They put out the art of the Apukas here, and he wrote a book called Observed While Falling. And Observed While Falling is a trip. It's really beautiful because the guy basically starts out as this normie artist, and exposure to Burroughs opened his mind to, he basically was like, the dead it's like the dead communicate with us. And there's this weird like time phenomena that like examples had to do with Patty Hearst, like the Patty Hearst thing at the where she was like, you know Patty Hearst, you know about that? Okay, basically there like some shit happened with this named Patty Hearst in real life.
I will say that I will say, for the sake of this recording, to cut after a year of dealing with it, I am not sober. So you may have to, and also I feel like some of the audience may not recognize the Patty Hearst thing. So could you go into some detail for us?
Gladly. I mean, I'm not an expert on it. Just Walter Randolph Hearst, I think that was his name. Citizen Kane. He's the character that Orson Welles is portraying in Citizen Kane. It's like a parody kind of event. It's like based on Hearst. He at one point, I believe, he owned like 75% of the newspapers in America, or like he had a huge monopoly on the press, and the yellow journalism. He was basically trying, heavy propaganda, favoring whatever he favored, trying to get the American public to be behind. And he might have supported the Nazis initially, but apparently he was obsessed with the idea of immortality. So Burroughs created this character named Mr. Hart, who is this evil CEO who discovers a Mayan codice, and it sort of, he triggers the apocalypse. But anyway, this guy, I can't remember his last name, Malcolm, just exposure to Burroughs really like cracked his head open. He basically was like, yeah, like there were with the Titanic and then with the Patty. Okay, I'm sorry. Patty Hearst was the heiress of that fortune, and during the 60s, all of a sudden she showed up on a security camera in a bank, with automatic weapons, where
Oh, I know this. She got in with the anarchists, didn't she? She sort of went from daddy's little princess to hardcore rebel.
She got kidnapped and she got reprogrammed, and then and then the shit hit the fan. But in this book, the guy that was working with Burroughs, somehow, I don't remember how it wove into his story, but it's like he discovered a novel that had been written several years before that described almost precisely what ended up happening with Patty Hearst. And then similarly, something happened with the Titanic, where there was a book that got published. It was, maybe it was called it wasn't the Titan. It was
it was it was something to do with Titan. It was like the Journey of the Titan or something like that.
Yeah, it's a story. It's like the biggest ship in the world hits an iceberg and sinks, and this was before the Titanic. And then Burroughs was just Burroughs and this guy were just like, what the fuck's going on here? It's like cut ups, temporal phenomena.
Yeah. That's ignoring the whole Olympic conspiracy, which is the idea that the Titanic and the Olympic were sister ships, and the Olympic was damaged in its maiden voyage. So they switched the signs and planned to have the Olympic labeled the Titanic fail on its maiden voyage to collect a massive insurance claim. And unfortunately, it all went wrong. And the story goes the full sort of perfect Titanic is either still there or was deconstructed for metal for future conflict. There's a few interesting theories about the Titanic, but that's for another time.
Alex, go.
So Matt, you just reminded me of something. There's been this stuff, at least at the beginning of the Trump administration, going up till now. It was
Here we fucking go.
it was talked about more between 2017 and 2018, but there was this children's book written about this child named Baron Trump.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
I forget what year it was supposed to be set in, but he I'm not sure what the premise was, because I haven't looked at it in a long time, but what you were talking about reminded me of this Baron Trump story, and Donald Trump's son is named Baron Trump, and there was a bunch of similarities, and it was really, really weird. And it's set in New York City, and he was born in New York City, and then he becomes emperor. So I don't know what it was like.
Tunnels under the earth on one of them.
Yeah. It was the tunnels under the earth. That's the one. And it just reminded me of that, and I'm like, oh man,
Aaron's cool.
So now, all right. So you guys are starting to get an idea of what we're dealing with here.
Yes,
but
it's
in the case of the Lemurian Timewar, there's a specifically retroactive effect.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, with what they're doing, it's a little bit different in the sense of it's specifically retroactive. In that it's like how did you put it? It's communicating to the past. In the Matrix, they upload a skill directly into their mind.
Cool.
You would get an upload effect using this hyperstitional methods or whatever by communicating with Matt 15 years ago and being like, kid, get your dick out of your hand and start practicing kung fu. And he does it, and now you have kung fu power. Bam. Suddenly you forget 15 years of whatever you were doing instead, and eating Cheetos or whatever. It's replaced by 15 years of fucking diamond push-ups, and now you've got an awesome chest. You take your shirt off and beat this guy's ass.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing to consider is like that there's a whole load of symbolism packed into this one piece, and the fact is, if you're just reading Lemurian Timewar, which will be in the description, I will make sure of that. Lemurian Timewar is just one piece of a way larger text. And I will say that if you can piece it together, it becomes way more complex and way trickier to juggle. But at the same time, you get a better understanding of what's going on. Because we have to remember, and I feel like this is also, Uncle, why do you hide your face? Show your face, you coward. Do not hide from me, Mr. Sickness.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, your face is just a character at this point. Show your real bitty face. But what I was going to say is that there's a big thing at the moment in academia of death of the author. But in this case, it is nearly impossible to separate the work from the person responsible for it. And the main person responsible for it is a chap called Nick Land, who is currently hiding out in Shanghai for various reasons that I'm sure we'll get into in later episodes.
Cool.
But there's a lot that has to be discussed with his work and that which has preceded this particular text and the particular group's work.
Well, happy that the Time War kicked off today. Happy to be participating in the Time War now that I know I am.
So the whole concept of the Time War kind of revolves around this character of Casstles. So with that, I will open the book. I will access the secret text. There we go. He shows his face.
Secret text.
But the Lemurian Timewar kind of reveals itself around this character called William K. He only shows up once within the whole book. William K is just a singular individual, and he works for Captain Peter Visperov. And Visperov is kind of at the core of everything going on in these texts. We will get onto him at a later date because the texts regarding him are, number one, truly disturbing, and number two, fucking badass. But I mean, obviously, the best text to consult on this matter is Lost Tomorrows and Digital Hyperstition. But what we have here is an account for an individual suffering from paranoid chronomaniacs hallucination, who draws upon this idea of hyperstition to understand what occurred with this seemingly metafictional engagement with William S. Burroughs. So I think it might be worth discussing the concept of hyperstition. Like, where are you guys regarding that idea? Like, how do you understand it?
The funny thing about it is it's like it's like the only sticking point is like terminology. I think I know what you're talking about just from my own work and kind of experimentation and sort of like postulation about time and
to give
exposure to Burroughs.
An illustration, like a demonstration for the students.
Okay,
for those who are watching.
Like Burroughs talked about how he didn't really like people. Most people, like, he liked the characters he created more than he felt like the characters he created oftentimes were more real and more interesting than most people. And that comes onto the subject of like the tulpa, which is a Buddhist concept. The idea that, so in Buddhism, it's like concentrated thought forms that attain sentience through the power of the monk's, you know, ability to concentrate and focus. Even, and I'll cut in, Charles Manson, I went down that hole a while ago, like that rabbit hole. In the first documentary I saw about it, talked about how he would create these complex figures out of string in prison, like snakes, spiders, scorpions, little men, really like beautiful pieces. So maybe they sell them online as art, but his intention was to like send them out into the world to enact his will. So like, I feel like that's on par with Hyperstition, right? I mean, like create, like if the thought becomes real, you sing songs to it. It's through the focus. It's like, I mean, it's very like, kind of like, sort of like automata, but there's an idea that, yeah, I mean, like, there's an idea that they're, you know, that people can kind of create like robots, but then they can actually, you know, develop their own agenda, and so they're dangerous.
I mean, that's an interesting interpretation of Burroughs' own work. What I'm considering, Uncle, YogaMidnight, Maeko, if you're up to it, is like, what I could do is read each section of the paper. And then what might be worth doing is just breaking it down. I know you don't want to give these... The people who wrote this are weirdos, I'll give you that. But as much as you don't want to give them airtime, it may be worth breaking it down piece by piece and figuring out what's going on. So how do you guys feel about that? Right. So the text we're looking at is... Let's find it. It's called the Lemurian Timewar. It's in this book. But Uncle has put a version of it up on the Google Drive, so it might be worth bringing that up on your screens now. I mean, if you want to, we can like read through it, and we can kind of put it together as we go along. Or it's really up to you guys how you want to do this. It's like a significant text.
If we're being completely honest, on a personal level, I hate these guys and I don't want to give them play. But I do love the idea, like a lot of the ideas that they came up with. I can't fault them for having succeeded where so many of us at the same time failed, who were doing exactly the same thing, you know? Like, so
I'm working on the basis that I am basically the guy who can answer the questions as we go along. So it just sort of depends on, do you guys know enough to ask? I mean, Uncle, I'm guessing you've read enough of it to be able to ask a few questions as we go along discussing this matter.
Yeah.
You'll be able to summarize it and put forward questions. But Matt and Alex, like, have you managed to get to grips with at least some of the ideas that we're going to be doing, like Hyperstition? Are we okay?
Thinking about it.
Yeah. No, I was thinking, even though this is going to be nothing but time war hype to draw people in. If this is mostly going to be talking about something like Hyperstition, because I think a lot of people aren't familiar with the idea, and it is pretty applicable considering the last several months. So
I would say the last couple of years, to be honest, like some of the shit that's gone down. Have you guys got it up?
I've got the text.
Okay. I'll just give you guys I would say just have a moment to kind of read through and sort of like get some ideas for questions in your head. If you want to read the dissertation as well, that's a condensed analysis, and it should explain Hyperstition to a degree where hopefully if I've written it right, it'll make sense. Lost Tomorrows and Digital Hyperstition, which took an entire fucking year.
Lost Tomorrow's great.
That drove me slightly insane.
Epic phrasing.
gave you bubblegum.
Yeah. No, seriously, I had a full nervous breakdown by the end of it, and it was not pretty. Let's put it like that. I'm better now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hyperstition.
Hyperstition is a mind fuck. Yeah.
I don't really understand hyperstitionism. Can we talk about that? Let's just start there. Can we talk about what's hyperstition?
Hyperstition.
Hyperstition is a mind fuck. It is possible to get your head around it. It's a bit tricky. Go on Lost Tomorrows and Digital Hyperstition. And that's my master's dissertation on this subject. Chapter 1 will cover hyperstition. That should tell you, it should hopefully communicate what's going on. I can elaborate in the actual podcast, but like I feel that if we're going to tackle this, you kind of need a decent idea of what we're contending with before you get stuck in.
You know, the more I read through that, Jordan, you may remember me mentioning a book called Grimace.
No, I don't actually. You haven't brought this up to me.
It's oh man, I just lost it. What's his name? He wrote the Satanic Verses.
LaVey? Anton Salazar LaVey.
No.
Salman Rushdie.
Thank you. Salman Rushdie wrote a book called Grimace about people who become immortal and then unlock reality warping, dimension hopping power. And there's sort of a battle between cosmic principles. And interestingly enough, a lot of the ideas that these people, well, not a lot, but a fair portion of ideas overlap between the two books. I think some months ago when I mentioned this to you, it's because you were talking more about, you know, this. We had a specific conversation about this, you and I brought Grimace up, but that's a, you know, it's an interesting story, to say the least.
I'll say that the material we're going to be covering, there's some interesting symbolism here, especially in the terms of symbolistic stuff. I will also say that unlike the Lemurian Timewar document that Uncle found is very much on its own, what this gives the benefit of is an added glossary at the back, so it can explain some of the terms. So if there are any terms that we feel that the viewers may be unfamiliar with, or anything that they may need clarifying, by all means, let me know, and I will happily refer to the glossary to bring them up to speed. Also, I can see Kerry in the background playing with the cat. Hello, Kerry. I hope you're well. I hope everything's going well, especially with this nightmare happening in America right now. Are we all ready to get stuck in? Yeah.
Let's do it.
Uncle's sort of fixing up his hair.
Prepare.
Alex,
for
you good? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready.
All right. Let's try to bring back something from college.
Thumbs up, and
all right. I've got my sanity helmet on. Let's go.
Okay, let's go with part 1 up to Hyperstition. So, Lemurian Timewar. Time for my reading voice. The account that follows charts William Burroughs' involvement in an occult time war and considerably exceeds most accepted conventions of social and historical probability. It is based on sensitive information passed to the CCRU, Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, by an intelligence source who we have called William Kay. The CCRU first met William Kay on March 20th, 1999. He stated at this, our first and last face-to-face encounter, that his purpose in contacting the CCRU was to ensure that his tale would be protected against the ravages of time. Irony was not immediately apparent. This narrative has been partly fictionized in order to protect this individual's identity. Kay himself admitted that his experience had made him prone to paranoid chronomaniac hallucination, and the CCRU continues to find much of his tale extremely implausible. We have recorded our comments and doubts, along with details of his story, in the footnotes of this document. Nevertheless, while suspecting that his message has been severely compromised by dubious inferences, noise, and disinformation, we have become increasingly convinced that he was an insider of some kind, even if the organization he had penetrated was itself an elaborate hoax or collective delusion. Kay wrote this organization as the Order, or following boroughs, the Board. When reduced to its basic provocation, Kay's claim was this: the ghost lemurs of Madagascar, the story that was commissioned and published by Omni magazine in 1987, with the only constraint imposed by the magazine being that there should not be too much sex, which he also referred to as the Burroughs Necronomicon, a text dating from 1987, had been an exact and decisive influence on the magical and military career of one Captain Mission 3 years previously. Mission appears in historical record as a notorious pirate, active in the period around 1700 AD. He was to become renowned as the founder of the anarchic colony of Libertalia, established on the island of Madagascar. Kay asserted that he had personally encountered clear evidence of his impact upon Mission at the private library of Peter Visperov, where Kay worked for most of his life. The Visperov collection, he unswervingly maintained, held an ancient illustrated manuscript of the ghost lemurs of Madagascar, inscribed meticulously in Mission's own hand. Kay was adamant that the existence of these two texts could not be attributed to either coincidence or plagiarism, although his reasoning was at times obscure and less than wholly persuasive to the CCRU. Nor has the CCRU been able to track down examples of Mission's handwriting sufficient to provide a basis for identification of the manuscript, although Kay assured us that the British Museum, the Smithsonian Institute, and several private collections possess the relevant documents, despite their denials to the fact. Kay assured us that the board considered the demonstrable time rate he was describing to be a matter of the great concern. He explained that the organization had been born in reaction to a nightmare of time coming apart and, to use his exact words, spiraling out of control. To the board, spirals were particularly repugnant symbols of imperfection and volatility. Unlike closed loops, spirals always have loose ends. This allows them to spread, making them contagious and unpredictable. The board was counting on Kay to contain the situation. He was assigned the task of terminating the spiral templex. The concept of the spiral templex, according to which the rigorous analysis of all time anomalies excavates a spiral structure, is fully detailed in R.E. Templeton's Miskatonic Lectures on Transcendental Time Travel. A brief overview of this material has been published by the CCRU as the Templeton episode in Digital Hyperstition, Abstract Culture, Volume 4. And that is on page 53 of this book. So that's the end of the first section. Right now, where are you three at? What are we thinking?
I like the Miskatonic University reference.
Yes, there's a lot of Lovecraft in this first section.
Oh yeah, yeah. This was heavily Lovecraft,
especially in regards to Lemuria.
Yeah, this whole thing, this whole setup is extremely Lovecraftian. This is exactly, hearing it read aloud in one go. It's like the setup for any of the Lovecraft stories that center on a character from or at Miskatonic University, the fictional university in Arkham, Massachusetts, where people research all sorts of.
Why do you think I'm drinking so much? This is me acing my stand check, natural 20.
What is the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit? Have you researched that? Have you looked into what that is?
That's what
that was the subject of my master's dissertation.
Cool.
I can read you a short piece on the origins of the CCRU, but it's literally one page. Communique 1 from the CCRU is a message to Simon Reynolds, 1998. Communique. CCRU and cybernetic culture imminently as the mode of propagation characterizing flat productive collectivities. Such flatness, whose intensive quanta are CCR units or barkers, includes number 1, coincidence of thought process, number 2, counterchronic arrival from machinic virtuality, number 3, absolute impersonality, ahistoricity, and extraterritoriality. CCRU consists of datable swarm convergences in process. It has no genealogy, geographic center, biographical attribution, or institutional dependency. CCRU retrochronically out from October 1995, UK University, the University of Warwick, as a temporary habitat. Its emergence is sequenced and accelerated by a series of singularities, Barker thresholds. The Virtual Futures Conferences, Spring 1994, 1995, and 1996. The Orphan Drift Cyber Positive book in 1995. The *** Collapse Journal from 1995 to 1996. The Afro Futures event, February 1996, the KO: Labs Breakbeat Experimentation Zone, the Vido Technique, October 1997, and the Swiss/Orphan Drift collaboration, Syzygy, Beaconsfield Art Centre, London, autumn 1998. Who or what you are speaking to can be accessed at different levels of. It might be helpful to think of these as options or hatching opening along a corridor. I apologize, I am drunk. At degree 0, 1998, CCRU is the name on a door in an institution which said of the CCRU that it does not, has not, and will never exist. Shows the book. entities. It stretches between human agencies below one bar and on. Jesus Christ, I'm having flashbacks. The entity or polytendrilled abomination barkers.
Wow. That jumped around perfectly.
Flashback. Yeah. All CCRU products, practices, open brackets, text and breakbeat, researchology, the abstract culture pamphlet, concept engineering, upcoming books, and CDs, close brackets, intercoil along a line of continuous variation. That is the end of communique number 1, and I will say that the CCRU, to give you further context, it began as a project being led by cyber feminist Sadie Plant, and she was left-leaning but kind of reasonable. From what I've seen, she was deriving a lot of her stuff from VNS Matrix out in Australia. And what happened was she, after a year, left the CCRU. So 1977, the year I was born, the CCRU was created by Sadie Plant. 1988, Nick Land took control. And Nick Land, for the record, is a decidedly crazy right-wing, possibly cyber-fascist nutcase drug addict currently hiding out in Shanghai, who may or may not have had something to do with the Trump election. It's hard to put it any other way. He's a special kind of supervillain. The CCRU is a weird subject. I've seen a number of testimonies from his students saying every time I saw him for a meeting, he was high. And if you look at him now, he's pretty fucking wrecked. If you believe in physiognomy, yeah.
Yeah, looks like what he is.
Yeah. So where are we standing on this so far? So we've got an idea of the CCRU, and we've got like our first toe dipped into the time war.
Say,
where are we at?
I don't know if you guys have read or viewers have read Naked Lunch by William S. Burroughs. The thing, it came from, he shot his wife in the head. He went to, he escaped to, he went to Morocco, and then he got addicted to heroin.
I had to read this for uni, so yeah, I have definitely read this.
Yeah, so basically it came from the word horde, where it was like he just found himself writing, and his friends, Ginsberg and Kerouac went to visit him, and then they found like all this fucking gold, but it didn't make sense. It was crazy. It was just like, be like a little bit of like, it'd be like a bit or like the beginnings of a story, and then he just like kind of trailed off. And so they wove it together to make Naked Lunch. My reason for talking about this is when I read Naked Lunch is a weird fucking book. And I found when I read it, oftentimes like, oh, I just read 5 pages that I read before, and I don't remember any of that. Like I remember this part that so I kind of, so that it's the book is experiential. It's kind of like you flow through it. And that's how I feel about this. That's how I'm treating this. I'm letting it flow, and then catching the things that seem interesting or relevant, and kind of just making notes, because there are a lot of synchronistic like ding, like points. I will say it made me think about alternate reality games. I don't know a lot about this, and it's down a rabbit hole. It's like, kind of tangential from the pizza stuff, but like it was making me think of this thing called World Corp, specifically, like these creepy chaotic, kind of like glitchy videos. Just that.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone watching this is into alternate reality games, like I would highly recommend the channel Night Mind for a rundown of a lot of this shit. Or guy calling himself Nick Nocturne, he's going through that sort of thing. I don't remember if he's done a particular video on World Corp or on the CCRU for that matter. But if you pester him enough, he'll go into it. So I'm encouraging the Kung Fu disciples of Uncle Sickness to go pester Night Mind into tackling the CCRU.
Right.
But,
My mighty force of 50
in
followers.
regards to William S. I mean, they're only 50, but they're persistent motherfuckers. Otherwise, they wouldn't still be here. Alex.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your day is frozen.
Wow. Oh,
Come on.
nope. Wait.
Do I have to read the passages in?
No, you froze. You
Right.
you
Tell you
kind
what.
of you started to move, so it
I will.
froze.
I'll ask. Okay. I will. I'll ask Uncle. What do you think of the subject thus far regarding the text? And then we'll go back to Maeko, to Alex.
Well, as I had mentioned before, sort of a Lovecraft feel to it. It.
Yeah.
I don't mean it's written the way Lovecraft wrote. I mean it's setting up a narrative that plays out very much like plots in Lovecraft stories. You know, this is groundwork for something larger that
Oh yeah.
it's strange, but it's not strange enough to arouse suspicion. So it still counts as innocuous, but it's still a bunch of weird stuff.
I mean, we are
What'd you
only
say?
on part one, so
Yeah.
give it time.
So,
We're only on part one, so like it gets weirder. Go on, Matt. What were you gonna say?
it's also making me think of this idea that there's certain books that aren't normal books. The idea, like, I don't know if there's like a name for that trope, but something that I've found in, like, you know, the last 10 years and things that pique my interest is that there's certain books where it's like a fucking portal or something, like where it'll cause disturbance. Yeah, and it definitely, it doesn't feel like a normal book. It feels like that.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty accurate way to put it.
Forbidden books, you know.
Yeah.
I was actually gonna.
If you put me in that chat with you three, I will add the full text of the CCRU for you guys to pour over. And we'll see how far the rabbit hole goes.
I'll probably buy it.
Yeah.
As far as
But
forbidden,
okay, so Matt's kind of.
I think Alex was about to say. Alex, what were you saying, Alex?
yeah. So to
Yeah, what were you saying? Alex?
what Uncle Sickness and what YogaMidnight are saying, I think as we start to get deeper into this, it's gonna start getting real weird as we go deeper down the rabbit hole. But as far as forbidden books, because this definitely seems in line with as far as forbidden books is concerned, like how there's like there's a hidden archive somewhere in the Vatican, but there's other places that have had like the forbidden book section where it, you know, you kind of it grays the lines of reality a little bit.
Yeah.
And because it's so incredibly Lovecraftian, it's like what's like how far does this go and does it stop is what I'm gathering from this. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to see just how deep this goes, and is there a limit? And if not, oh boy.
Permanently, irreversibly insane forever.
Yep.
That's usually what happens in Lovecraft stories with setups like these. You know, no one necessarily gets devoured by monsters, but somebody sees something that's just like, and then they're just fucking completely out of their mind forever.
I've never read Lovecraft, but
oh, it's dynamite stuff. They're fun. Like they're interesting stories. You know, I'm not a fan of horror in and of itself, or like creepy suspense or things like that. But there's a unique quality to them, and I would recommend checking them out. Yeah, it's some of the only fiction that I actually still like. Like I like Sanction. I have all 3 volumes of Sanction. I have Salman Rushdie and I have H.P. Lovecraft. Like, that's what I have for fiction for the most part, and a couple of Kurt Vonnegut.
I will say, would love to see a novel pitting Lovecraftian horror against the kind of protagonist that Roman McClay writes. That would be fucking badass.
God, right? Some
So,
sort of cyber enhanced
I think we
clone
kind of exhausted
monstrosity.
part 1 of. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, to be honest, I'd love to just set the real Cthulhu on the real Roman McClay and write down the results, because it'd sort of be like, I will drive you insane. And he would, the Scots blood would just activate and he'd sucker punch the fucker. Okay, so, shall I continue with the text proper through Hyperstition up to the One God universe, and we can discuss the concept of Hyperstition? Okay, so here we go. Visperov had sought out Burroughs because of his evident interest in the convergence of sorcery, dreams, and fiction. In the immediate post-war years, Visperov had convened the so-called Cthulhu Club to investigate connections mythology, science, and magic.
Not supposed to hear this.
Visperov's involvement in Aleister Crowley's Ordo Templar Orientis and Thelemic magic is evident from his treatise on Atlantean black magic, Kingsport Press, 1949. His investigations into the connections between the writings of Crowley and Lovecraft seem to have foreshadowed the similarly oriented researches of Kenneth Grant, although there is no reason to believe that Grant was in any way aware of the Cthulhu Club synthesis, and was at an early stage in the process of formalizing the constitution of Miskatonic Virtual University, or MVU, a loose aggregation of non-standard theorists whose work could broadly be said to have Lovecraftian connotations. The interest in Lovecraft's fiction was motivated by his is where my wretched drunken mouth struggles. Exemplification of the practice of hyperstition, a concept which had been elaborated and keenly debated since the inception of the Cthulhu Club. Loosely defined, the coinage refers to fictions that make themselves real. Kay drew the CCRU's attention to Burroughs' description of viruses in Our Pook is Here. And what is a virus? Perhaps simply a pictorial series of Egyptian glyphs that makes itself real. AP 102. The papers Kay left for the CCRU included a copy of this page in the Arpuk text, with these two sentences, italicized in the original text, heavily underlined. For Kay, the echo of Visperov's language was unequivocal evidence of the Russian influence upon Russia's 1958. Whether or not this is the case, like Visperov, was interested in the hyperstitional relations between writing, science, and reality. In the hyperstitional model Kay outlined, fiction is not opposed to the real. Rather, reality is understood to be composed of fictions, consistent semiotic terrains that condition perceptual, affective, and behavioral responses. Kay considered Burroughs' work to be exemplary of hyperstitional practice. Burroughs construed writing, and art in general, not aesthetically, but functionally, that is to say, magically, with magic defined as the use of signs to produce changes in reality. Kay maintained that it was far from accidental that Burroughs' equation of reality and fiction had been most widely embraced only in its negative aspect. Fuck, I'm really drunk. I dropped the fucking only its negative aspect as a variety of postmodern ontological skepticism, rather than in its positive sense as an investigation into the magical powers of incantation and manifestation, the efficacy of the virtual. For Kay, the assimilation of Burroughs into textualist postmodernism constituted a deliberate act of interpretive sabotage, the aim of which was to defunctionalize Burroughs' writings by converting them into aesthetic exercises in style, far from constituting a subversion of representative realism. The postmodern celebration of the text without a referent merely consummates a process that representative realism had initiated. Representative realism separates writing from any active function, surrendering it to the self-reflecting, not intervening in the world. From there, it is a short step to a dimension of pristine textuality in which the existence of a world independent of discourse is denied altogether. I hope you're taking notes, by the way. According to Gay, the metaphysics of Burroughs' clearly hyperstitional fictions can be starkly contrasted with those of work in postmodernism. For postmodernists, the distinction between real and unreal is not substantive, or is held not to matter, whereas for practitioners of hyperstition, differentiating between degrees of realization is crucial. This is a very long passage, and I'm very drunk. The hyperstitional process of entities making themselves real is precisely a passage, a transformation in which potentials, already active virtualities, realize themselves. Writing operates not as a passive representation, but as an active agent of transformation and a gateway through which entities can emerge. By writing a universe, the writer makes such a universe possible. But these operations do not occur in natural history, Kay was quick to point out. Burroughs treats all conditions of existence as results of cosmic conflicts between competing intelligence agencies. In making themselves real, entities must manufacture realities for themselves, realities whose potency often depends upon stupefaction, subjugation, and enslavement of populations, and whose existence is in conflict with other reality programs. Burroughs' fiction deliberately renounces the status of plausible representation in order to operate directly upon this plane of magical war, where realism merely reproduces the currently dominant reality program from inside, never identifying the existence of the program as such. Burroughs seeks to get outside the control codes in order to dismantle and rearrange them. Every act of writing is a sorcerer's operation, a partisan action in a war where multitudes of factual events are guided by the powers of illusion. Even representative realism participates, albeit unknowingly, in magical war, collaborating with the dominant control system by implicitly endorsing its claim to be the only possible reality. From the controller's point of view, Kay said, it is of course imperative that Burroughs is thought of as merely a writer of fiction. That's why they have gone to such lengths to sideline him into a ghetto of literary experimentation. This concludes the section on Hyperstition. So I'm curious to hear what you chaps have to think about that. Alex, if you'd like to begin.
I'm not entirely sure how I should begin, because that's... Ooh. Matt, what do you think?
Hold on a second.
Because it was kind of...
Yeah, hold on a second. There's a a lot. I'm kind of like a Burroughs expert. I'm not trying to front, but like legit. I've read almost everything that Burroughs has written, and I understand it because I understand the schismatic effect of it because I've been on I can get on that level, and I've been thinking about things like that, especially during the pandemic. Sorry, Jordan, I have to go back to Ted Kaczynski because Brad's suggestion of looking into the Unabomber Manifesto led me down this rabbit hole about cybernetics and how ultimately cybernetics isn't really just about controlling machines. It's also about making people like robots. It has to do with feedback loops, and that had also made me think of there's this thing called the Pygmalion effect, where expectations affect outcomes. So for example, let's just pretend that the media said Matt Peterson is the fucking devil, and they just put it on TV and they're like, oh, this guy's the fucking devil. Like the public mind would put that, would kind of collectively put that on me. I don't know if you've ever had an experience of being scapegoated, but it makes you, bizarrely kind of twists you into the thing that's being projected on you. It's like, you want me to be a bad guy? All right, I'll be a fucking bad guy, and I really think that the reality that we live in is being twisted by illusion and things that are and manipulation of echo chambers. Also, there was I watched this video that was talking about the philosophy of the Matrix. Now, I don't remember the name of the channel, but that was one of the videos. It was talking about the philosopher who largely inspired the concept of the Matrix. This guy, I think his name was Gilliard or Gillard, and he said, like, he was like, oh, I hate how people think that's about the allegory of the cave, because at this point he's like, there is no sun. Like, basically he's like, we've gotten past the point of like objective reality where like we're just gonna go deeper and deeper into the fucking cave. And my reflection on honestly, reality right now, I think that there's actually a Manichaean war between actually nothing is real and we're just going to make a bunch of crazy fucking shit real and we're going to go with that, versus people who are like, nah, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
That's what I think. That's what I got.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this and I can't, which is why I diverted it to Matt, because I don't think I understand this well enough, and I feel like it's going over my head quite a bit. So I'm not sure if I can say too much about this particular subject, because it's just blowing my mind.
Fair enough. So something that jumped out to me is this idea of conditioning reality with compositions, the power of the word to change reality and stuff like that. There are certain elements from the like inception periods of a lot of great philosophical systems that are pretty similar. They have people debating the nature of the mind and the nature of reality and the nature of communication and the nature of this, that's like, those are the usual sorts of debates that give rise to traditions of philosophy, right? So these people are talking I'm struck by how much these people are focused on influencing various things with their work. We definitely need Jordan back because he is the only one that can even really talk about this shit. Like, it's so impossible to. Alex admitted that he feels like he's not getting all of it. I'm over here babbling like a half-wit.
I apologize. There was a minor.
Everything okay?
That required assistance with. Just a minor situation. So where are we up to?
Oh, that last passage.
What do you need my help?
Oh, it's just the whole last section is just kind of overwhelming in some ways. And I was saying I was struck by a lot of that last passage.
I will say the more specific you guys are, the more I'll be able to help you. So where was it trickiest?
The whole thing, basically.
The whole thing.
I'm trying. I believe I may have made a mistake about saying, how far does the rabbit hole go? Let's find out. Because I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and I can't. But I'm trying.
Yeah, you kind of went down if you were wondering how far the rabbit hole went down, you picked the wrong rabbit hole, because this goes all the way down.
I think the author's intention.
Yeah. So, whereabouts did you guys get stuck?
I just want to say that,
roughly speaking,
All right, Matt, go ahead.
Go on. You just want to say that.
I believe the author is intentionally overloading the reader. As I said, like Burroughs has a sort of metaphysics that he espouses, it's like through his catalog of work, he's talking a lot about reality and the word and the nature of the word. Like he wrote a lot about the idea of the word as a virus, and the thing is, I feel like there's a kind of way of thinking that it's kind of like the way that he wrote his work kind of puts people in a different way of processing information, because it's very associative. It's very like, you know, he did cut up, so we'd like cut shit up, rearrange it, and then you have these weird sentences that are like somehow like, what, like something's going on there. So I feel like I think that the author is kind of like, it's like, I don't know, it's weird. It's like they're kind of stuffing it down. They're like really like jamming a lot down your throat, without a sort of like, you know, without
I can see exactly where you're going with that. I think the thing to remember is that this was either written Nick Land or one of his cronies, and I think that you have to consider this is deliberately written to obfuscate details to those who are other than true believers. What I will say is that I think that after the next section, because he goes on to this concept called the one God universe, and I think that I'll read this, I'll see where we're currently at, and we'll see how we're getting along, because I think that once you've had this section, it may start coming together. So are we all good for me to continue with the reading? You good? Good? Alex, I'm getting thumbs up from Alex.
Yeah.
I'm getting thumbs up from Matt. Uncle, what do you reckon? Should I continue?
Yes.
One God universe. Burroughs names the dominant control program One God Universe, or OGU. He wages war against the fiction of One God Universe, which builds its monopolistic dominion upon the magical power, upon programming and illusion. One God Universe establishes a fiction which operates at the most fatal level of reality, where questions of biological destiny and immortality are decided. In the words of Burroughs, religions are weapons. In order to operate effectively, One God Universe must first there's only one reality, its own. In writing about magical war, Burroughs is thus already initiating an active war against One God Universe, mainlining contestation into primal unity. One God Universe incorporates all competing fictions into its own story, the ultimate meta-narrative, reducing alternative reality systems to negatively marked components of its own mythos. Other reality programs become capital E, evil, associated with the powers of deception and delusion. One God Universe's power works through fictions that repudiate their own fictional status. Anti-fictions are non-fictions. And that, Kay said, is why fiction can be a weapon against the struggle against control. In the One God Universe, fiction is safely contained by a metaphysical frame, prophylactically delimiting all contact between the fiction and what is outside it. The magical function of words and signs is both condemned as evil and declared to be delusory, facilitating a monopoly upon the magical power of language for the One God Universe, which, of course, denies that its own mythos exists. Any magical in presenting it as a simple representation of truth. The One God Universe's confidence that fiction has been safely contained means that anti-One God Universe agents can use fiction as a covert line of communication and a secret weapon. In the words of Burroughs, he concealed and revealed the knowledge in fictional form. This, for Kay, was a formula for hyperstitional practice. Diagrams, maps, sets of abstract relations, tactical gambits, are as real in a fiction about a fiction about a fiction as they are when encountered raw. But subjecting such semiotic contraband to multiple embeddings allow trafficking materials for decoding dominant reality that would otherwise be prescribed. Rather than acting as a transcendental screen, blocking a conflict between itself and the world, the fiction acts as a Chinese box, a container for sorcerous interventions in the world. The frame is both used for concealment and broken. The fictions potentiate changes in reality. Whereas hyperstitional agitation produces a positive unbelief, a provisionalizing of any reality frame in the name of pragmatic engagement rather than epistemological hesitation. That sentence in itself is a mindfuck. The One God Universe feeds on belief. In order to work, the story that runs reality has to be believed, which is also to say that the existence of a control program determining reality must not be suspected or believed. Credulity in the face of the One God Universe meta-narrative is inevitably coupled with the refusal to accept that entities like control have any substantive existence. That's why, to get out of the One God Universe, a systematic shedding of all beliefs is a prerequisite. In the words of Burroughs, only those who leave behind everything they have ever believed in can hope to escape. I've read that wrong. Only those who leave behind everything they have ever believed in can hope to escape. That's better. Here we fucking go. This is where it gets fun. Techniques of escape depend upon attaining the unbelief of assassin magician Hassan Isaba. Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. Once again, Kay cautioned this must be carefully distinguished from postmodernism. Burroughs / Savard's "nothing is true" cannot be equated with postmodernism's "nothing is real." On the contrary, nothing is true because there is no signal, authorized diversion of reality. Instead, there is a superfluity, an excess of realities. In the words of the man himself, the adversary's game plan is to convince you that he does not exist. Yeah. So that's the section on Hyperstition. How are we feeling? What do we think? Let's start with Matt. I think Matt's a good place to start with this. Or do you want a moment to think about it?
No, it's just like I'm saying, I feel like I'm looking at it from a different vantage point because I'm like deeply embedded in Burroughs' metaphysics. I think I've read that term One God Universe before. It's really like Burroughs legit adopted a sorcerer's approach to reality. He, which requires a rejection of like a sort of external mainline, like this is real. Like think of it, I don't know if you grew up in like a Christian household or a religious household, and at some point you were like, well, I'm not into some of this. Like, what's up? Kind of like it's like you break up on.
I will say that the term One God Universe has been noted to be in something called word virus the William S. Burroughs reader. So if anybody out there has read this, or if they've read The Western Lands by William Burroughs, they will have come across the term one God universe. So just for those who are watching this, if you read that book or if you're interested in this concept, by all means, go to those two texts, and that will give you a far deeper understanding than we can give.
Yeah, I would actually recommend The Electronic Universe. Burroughs wrote it. It's really short, and it's essentially like a sort of like postmodern grimoire based on his theories of the word and like experiments with cut-ups. He found like he did a lot of collaging. He would like take, you know, photos and like sound collage and mix them up, and he found weird shit happened when he did it. Like there was a cafe that he went and he had a really bad time. Like maybe they were rude to him, and he said he got food poisoning, and he was just like, I'm gonna fucking curse this place, fuck this place. So what he did was he was like, yeah, I know how I'm gonna do it. And he went and he took pictures, and they could see him, and he saw them see him, and he was like, yeah, you know what I'm doing, even if you don't know what I'm doing. And then he put it in his scrapbook, and he had like, you know, one picture with the place and one picture we had cut it out with an X-Acto knife. And for a week, he had chaos sounds from the Chicago riots, like dogs barking, you know, people screaming, you know, gunshots, fire engines. And he took a baseline recording of the street sound, and then he spliced in these chaos sounds. And for a week, it was like, I don't know, maybe for like an hour every day, he would walk around the place slowly, like playing the sounds at like a sub audio level, you know, like so people walking by couldn't tell what he was doing. And the place, short hours, maybe it was like, you know, they were open like 7 days a week, then they were open 5, then they were open 4. And then within a couple months, the place closed, and then nothing was there for like 10 years after. So Burroughs, that basically like made Burroughs think actually there's something, you know, like, you know, maybe reality is more plastic than people take for granted. So a lot of his work is like, this is predicated on a certain like kind of like a different vantage point of, you know, of like, you know, actually maybe maybe fiction isn't just fiction. Maybe fiction is kind of like, you know, plugging in or altering. And it does. I mean, that kind of like, yeah, that works in tune with like.
Yeah, a popular idea in comic books for the last 15 years or so has been that fictional worlds are alternate realities. So every story is an alternate reality. Every, you know, and they've been in DC Comics, at least they've been constantly doing stories like this, where any story is a world that, you know, whatever. But this whole thing about the nature of reality being more fluid and open to change, more dynamic, more, you know, filled with more possibilities, but being limited or stifled or defined or solidified by a central control. I mean, that's that's it's an easy theme to see in a lot of places over the last few years, shall I say.
Yeah, it fits in with Gnosticism. I mean, like I don't know how well any of you are acquainted with Gnostic thought, but generally it was like before Christianity was like solidified, there were people writing like, actually maybe the God of the Bible is actually the devil, like, and they like they had this idea that the universe was created. It came from Neoplatonism, this idea that God created the universe and different like emanations, that there was an initial God that was probably like androgynous and sort of like the Tao, and then gave birth to subsequent deities, and that the demiurge is the one that created the physical universe, and he believes, he thinks that he's the one and only, god, but actually is sort of like a prison keeper, and that souls are like the sparks of.
He is merely the son of Sophia, who splits herself to mate with herself because Christ decided to take his time, etc., etc., etc.
Christ isn't always part of it. I heard a
It's an interesting stance.
There was a version where she rejected her consort and then decided to just self-create. That these aeons were created in pairs of like male and female deities, and that she was like, actually, I'm not into this guy, and then that kind of like fucked it up. But that like, yeah, that they're like in so for the Gnostics, it was they weren't into procreating. They were into sort of like having sex not for procreation, you know, for like, and the idea was to like attain higher states, to kind of to get above to break out of the demiurge, to break out of the and I think that there's an implicit suggestion.
I suppose I'm a bit too goody to choose to be that kind of Gnostic.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I mean, I don't know. All I can do is speak, you know.
It's one of those. So there are a lot of. It seems like.
Hello, I'm the one who's like 3/4 of the way through a bottle of rum.
Anyway, it seems like there's there are always opportunities. Or every time a philosophy talking about the nature of reality and espousing a type of freedom that would make mundane problems kind of irrelevant crops up, there's always a movement to immediately devolve it into base hedonism. So you can trace the formation of philosophical Taoism by reading the last chapter of the Zhuangzi. It's called Tiansha, just means under heaven. But that's like a way to refer to the world, meaning their world, the Chinese cultural sphere. And he describes a series of philosophers that went into kind of making up the hodgepodge of like early Taoism. In Chinese philosophy, they talk about the Confucians and the Mohists. You know, they use terms that mean what we literally call them, Mohist, Confucian, like they were solidified, distinct, discrete, formal schools of philosophy and education. The rest of them were sort of like the Taoists, the legalists. They were all sort of collections of people with more or less similar ideas. You know? So with the Confucians and the Mohists, you're talking about two concrete monolithic groups. And with the rest, you're talking about, you know, these guys talk a lot about Tao. There was a whole faction where what they really talked about was like health maintenance exercises and longevity and stuff like that. Macrobiotic hygiene, you know? So basically I'm just getting at
wash your fucking hands after you piss, you fucking idiot.
fair enough.
If you want to be really base about it.
Yeah. But the
one thing I will say is regarding the OGU thing, the whole one God universe thing, that becomes very, very important as we go along, because what you'll find is that there is the one God universe, and then there is a very distinctive counter to that, which is associated with the East. So the one God universe is distinctly Western in the viewpoint of the CCRU. There is something that emerges as we'll go along that is very much more inclined towards
But little would
Orientalism towards all that stuff regarding Edward Said.
Little did these guys know that in the East, the Eastern equivalent of this monolithic, control-oriented, centralization-oriented force, Confucianism actually did take over.
I don't understand.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing you got to remember is that Nick Land is the guy who came up with, and I mean, if you type in Nick Land hyper racism onto Google, you will actually find his blog post, which describes how he would distinguish people by race. And it's the thing I feel I must make clear is that this was not made by sane people. This was made by people who were on a lot of drugs and who, by sheer damned will and by virtue of being in contact with the right people, influenced a lot of the political sphere we're existing in now. Like, there was the potential for something far more egalitarian and libertarian, but these fucks screwed it up, and now it is our task to kind of beat them out of it, more or less.
That's earlier on.
So this is not. Yeah. Like, when we talk about this stuff, when we talk about the CCRU, when we talk about the all this Lemurian Timewar stuff, for the record, any viewers who are thinking, "Oh, the Time War's really cool," no. This is how people have hijacked your brain. We are showing you how to break the fuck out. You want to live a good life? Reject the stuff we are showing you and resist control. You are better than this. If there's anything you take away from this episode of the Hall of Dark Truths, please recognize that you are better than the weak-willed, hyper-intellectual drug addicts who wrote this shit. And as we continue examining the CCRU, recognize that this bullshit, it doesn't have to be this way. You are better than this. Learn Kung Fu. Build your body. Learn how to govern yourselves on a personal level. And resist the bullshit that you're being forced into, because we can't do it for you. We can do our best, but at the end of the day, your life is your life. This is becoming an after-school special in the 80s, but fuck it. You ultimately are sovereign over your own existence. And what this book says, and how clever these people, they worked at the University of Warwick. Fuck them. You are human. And you have the inherent dignity and intelligence to rise above this bullshit. Don't let this Lovecraftian shit get in your way. This is not you should follow this. This is a field guide to how to take these fucks down. Remember that. Yeah. So, any additions to that, or shall I continue with the next section?
Oh, let's cut it off there for now.
Okay.
This shit is heavy and
so, shall I continue with the episode?
Oh man, this I mean, some of these last remarks, the last section, Jordan's remarks, not too long ago, these people have influenced political and cultural decisions over the last 20 years. The people that wrote this fucking nonsense, that are proposing, you know, they're not proposing a story where reality is malleable and two forces, you know, one of freedom and one of control are in opposition, you know, in conflict or whatever. They're not proposing something like that. They came up with this view of reality and are treating the real world as if that is true. So this sort of like decadent, weird nihilism that's been permeating everything for as long as any of us can remember.
Yeah.
These are the people responsible for this. They created something that was already.
I mean, if you're familiar with the term
like that,
dark enlightenment, that was created by the guy who made this stuff up.
Makes me think of video.
So, like,
what'd you say, Matt?
It's making me think of Videodrome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my god. That fucking movie has so many points of contrast in comparison with this work. Videodrome is hard to watch for me because it hits way too close to home.
Yeah.
Just the whole concept of it, from Brian Oblivion to just the whole governmental element of it, and just the idea of limit experiences being transformed into the lowest common denominators entertainment is just way too real to contend with right now. It's hard to, when you look at that film and you look at some of the stuff that some people at some times will view, I'm not going to say specifically how pornography. But what I will say is that it's really fucking hard to grapple with, especially when you consider how many people are involved in it and how many people they consider it a part of their personality to the point where they can't go without it, and that's heavy, man. That's like, you've got to evaluate the human race at that stage, you know. It's dark.
Right. Oh man. It makes me feel strong, and I get my PP touched, so I'm gonna keep doing it. That's a strong motivator for a lot of people. And unfortunately, this.
I know, and it shouldn't be, but it is.
Yeah. And these ideas, this philosophy that these people espouse, is a way to justify doing literally anything in pursuit of a
I will speak now. I'm not speaking as some noble individual who's like, the people who indulge in such things are lower than me. No. I grew up in this culture. Like, I'm resisting it as best I can. It's hard. If you're struggling with it, kudos to you. At least you're moving in the right direction. You know? Like, if you're trying to fight, that's a good start. So, fucking hell. No, it just gets dark.
Yeah. I think black is a part of the program. It's like universal. I think that there are anti-human forces. Yeah, there are anti-human forces at work who make people anti-humans, you know? Negative entities.
No, yeah, I mean, I would see that Generation Z and Generation Alpha have been set at a significant disadvantage. And I think that people like, if you've heard of Universal Man, I think that those guys are like, and James Dowling of Young to Live By are like really sticking the necks out and doing the right thing in regards to helping individuals rehabilitate themselves from that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that, definitely it's kind of like it's a fight, but by no means do you have to be losing it. So I think that, I think that the deck is stacked against the current generations, but there is a chance, and I think it's the wisdom passed down from those beforehand who will be able to help. So, like, again, the methods of Uncle Sickness, the methods of Universal Man, the methods of James P. Dowling, Young to Live By, all that stuff. I think it's if you're watching this and you're struggling with that kind of thing, go to them. They can help. I mean this genuinely. Go and get help, because you don't have to deal with that shit. I'm getting very preachy, I feel. But I think that context. I studied this for a year, and it drove me cuckoo. It made me crazy for a while. So I will say that if you're hearing what I'm reading and it's hitting you and you're like, oh shit, this feels really real, don't worry about it. You don't have to panic, but by all means, you should act on it. Lift some weights, learn Kung Fu, Uncle Sickness, YogaMidnight, Maeko can help with that. You want to learn how to improve your mind? I can probably help with that. And if you want to learn how to beat these impulsive things that the dark forces of the world seek to hijack, then by all means, people at Universal Man can definitely help you. So if there's anything you take away from this, if there's any lesson you take away from the whole of Dark Truths, it's that you are not alone, and you can become strong enough to fight back, because you are better than you think you are. Definitely.
Excellent. And so, on that note, we will end this first episode with our examination of this completely insane piece of work by these completely insane people
on drugs.
Oh my God. And can you see now why I got so angry about it at a couple of points, that these people have actually influenced our real culture. And part of our problem is people have become nihilistic and hedonistic and self-indulgent and sort of destructive and spiteful for no reason, because this, it's like a crime to fail because of some of these ideas. So again, this has been the first episode of Tales from the Dark Hall, the Hall of Dark Truths. Oh my God, there's going to be so much editing. But gentlemen, thank you. These people drive me up.
Do we have any closing comments?
Oh, yeah. Anything you guys have to add? Just look at Alex. Go ahead.
I'd say let's start with Uncle in regards to closing comments, and then we'll go Matt, and then we'll go Alex, and then I'll close it off.
These people,
Uncle, or do you want me to go first and then you go?
Oh my God, no! All I have to say is that I am infuriated. I'm infuriated by crab in a bucket mentality. I'm infuriated by pointlessly poisoning the well. These people have come up with this idea of reality being about a fundamental type of individual creativity, but immediately shackling it with this sort of depersonalizing, control-oriented oppression, for lack of a better way to say it, that just drives me up a wall, and now I have to hear these gibbering half-wits, these people out there with these lukewarm summer day IQs, trying to talk about deep philosophical or metaphysical things and thinking that they're better equipped than me because I don't know. I don't know. I blame the CCRU for all of that. The last 5 years of me having to have pointless pseudo intellectual conversations with goofballs. I blame on those people. The general nihilism and like disgusting, it's not even hedonism. Like people are out there getting laid because they're obsessing with sex without being able to have sex. And that bothers me so much. I don't like people that are destroying themselves through indulgence, but at least they're doing something. Whereas as seeing, knowing so many people in the last 15 years of my life, I can't count the number of people I've known who you could just give them thousands of dollars and turn them loose in a red light district and they still wouldn't be able to have sex. It blows my mind that there are people like that. And I don't mean it as like, to pick on them. I just mean that there are people who have been so confused.
It's not as an insult. It's just,
they've been so turned around that something that is built in and automatic can't even function properly. There's so much disruption that normal function isn't possible. That bothers me, that this person has been denied kind of a shot at any kind of happiness or any kind of fulfillment or any kind of pursuit of their own thing. Drives me up a wall. I blame that on these people. That's my comment.
Okay. Matt, what's your final comment on the piece so far regarding the Lemurian Time War?
As far as like Burroughs' work, which explores a lot of these themes, he was very focused on there's like a mirror thing, because he was like opposed to control, but there was also a fascination with control, right? So like, that's why he would like create like, make a villain character, and it's like, maybe that's part of me, but at least externally he was geared toward, he talked about, break, kind of, crack your head open, very like, like kind of commonplace for like people that were dropping acid or whatever, but individual, like freedom of the individual, freedom of thought, freedom of movement. But then paradoxically, it seemed the people that have really gravitated have kind of like incorporated this into this kind of like plastic reality into their philosophy, are gearing it towards like control, are gearing it towards like, our way or the highway, or like one, like, so there's something there's just something really confusing about it, because it's like the people that are trying to create OGU, or the people who are opposed to OGU are trying to create their own OGU, basically.
Yeah. I made comments like that to a very particular individual in my immediate post-college days, that you don't oppose the oppression of the so-and-sos. And that was how I said it at the time. I was like, whatever cause it is you're starting to mouth off about, I don't care. I know you don't care about that cause or those people. Your problem with the people in charge right now is that they have the audacity to be themselves and not be you. You think you should be in charge. You only dislike this at the time George W. Bush was president. I was like, you only dislike this George W. guy because he's president and you're not president. And if you were president, you think you could use the powers of the president to finally get some pussy for the first time in however long it's been. You're not going to be able to solve your problems with force. Even if you had power, it wouldn't work because that's not the solution to the problem at hand. And then there was a lot of oofing and head waggling, and, you know, he left, and I drew a cartoon about a person who was a popsicle man with stringy hair and, you know, a lollipop man, rather. Bry pop. But this thing of like people who want to find liberation and immediately try to, like, you know, I don't want to spread the idea of liberation around to liberate people. I want to spread the idea of liberation around so when these people are young and unsuspecting, I can immediately enslave them and have little batteries and little servants. So, you know, this kind of like pointless malevolence.
Yeah, it's really, it's yeah, that's the thing. It's really trippy. Like, you know, like on like the idea of like, you know, of like individuation being transformed or into like unbridled egotism, you know. Yeah. And there's a distinction.
Yeah,